I am gonna ruin my lipstick drinking this. Not a good choice. Hi everyone, my name is Angela. This is gonna be my August wrap up, and I'm also gonna talk about maybe some books that I want to read soon at the end, plus show you a couple books that I got recently. In August, I read 10 books, and only one of those books is on my physical TBR, which is fine because I have finally gotten my physical TBR to a manageable place. I think I have about 48 books on my physical TBR right now. I would really like to keep it in the 40s and 50s for the rest of the year, so as long as I don't go up super high and then not make any progress, it's fine. I read a lot of library books. I think almost all of these were library books that I read, so that's great. Support your local library. The first book I read was Days at the Murasaki Bookshop by Satoshi Yagisawa. This is like a cozy healing fiction kind of book. I don't know if that's like an official subgenre that can be applied to this, but to me there's like this subgenre of translated books from like Japan and Korea that have like very cozy settings, and they are just about like people and their stories, and they're meant to be very comforting. They're often short, and I've been kind of dabbling in those kind of books lately. This is about our main character, Takako, and she has recently been dumped and she had to quit her job because the man who dumped her was cheating on her, and he worked at the same place, and she ends up going to work with her uncle who owns this bookshop in this famous strip of like used bookstores. I don't actually know if this is a real place. I would hope that it is. And I also don't remember if it was in Tokyo. I think it was in Tokyo. Basically there's this street that's just full of really niche used bookstores, kind of like a book nerd's dream. And this book is literally just about her living and working in this, I mean, she doesn't live in the bookstore. I think she lives above the bookstore, but she's just kind of getting back to herself and falling in love with reading for the first time, because she's not a reader at the beginning of the book. The second half of the book was kind of disappointing because she stops working at the bookstore, and we're just exploring some like personal dynamics between some of her family members, which wasn't my favorite. I gave this book 3 stars. I thought it was a good, decent time. It kind of delivered what I wanted from it, but didn't do anything too special. I didn't have a lot of like glowing praise for it, but I did enjoy listening to it. This was indeed a library book, and yeah, it was just comforting to listen to on my commute. The next audiobook I listened to is Everything for You by Chloe Liese. This is book 5, I believe, in the Bergman Brothers series, which, if you don't know, is a series where there's this big family and each sibling gets their own standalone interconnected book. So obviously each book is its own romance, but there are characters from the other books that you get to see, and you get to explore how they've grown, and you know, if they're getting married, if they're having babies, if they've moved, you know, things like that. So if you really loved a couple in like a previous book, you get to see them in future books. It's very fun. It's very comforting to kind of go back to the same family and the same dynamics, and this one I really liked. There have been books in this series that I've only given like 3 stars, and then there are books that I've given 5 stars and 4.5 stars, and this book was a 4.5 star. So this is a male-male romance, and our Bergman sibling is Oliver Bergman, who I think is portrayed as a bit like young and immature throughout the series, and there is a little bit of a time jump in the beginning of this book, which I think is good. It was really nice to see like the journey of a lot of our characters, and Oliver is a professional soccer player, and the romance is between him and the team captain of his soccer team, who is this older, grumpy British man who Oliver has looked up to for a long time because he's like 10 years older than him, and so he was watching Gavin play soccer on TV when he was like a teenager and had a crush on him, and now they are actually going to be co-captains on this team, and they're also neighbors because you know, they just happened to buy houses in the same area, and I think it's in Los Angeles or something. So while this is technically a sports romance, I don't really think you have to give a shit about sports to enjoy this. I don't give a shit about sports, and I really loved this book. This is dual POV, so we do get Gavin's point of view as well, and I really loved this book. I had a wonderful time with it. I don't know, I just thought everything was great. I don't really know what held it back from being a 5-star. It just wasn't like quite that top tier romance book for me, but it was pretty close. Chloe Liese always does an excellent job of exploring the characters' like emotional journey, and you know, everyone has shit that they have to deal with, and you know, self-destructive tendencies or trauma or things that hold them back from being happy, you know, things like that. And I think Chloe Liese's characters are always really well realized, and Chloe Liese clearly is very smart and understands like things that you would learn about people in therapy. But I also thought it was really fun and hot. So just a great mix of everything I want in a romance book. Next up, I read an ebook borrowed from my library, and that is The Lost Story by Meg Schaefer. I know that Meg Schaefer's other book, a lot of people really hated, but I had seen people have really, really positive reviews for this one, like 5 stars, new favorite book of all time. So I was really intrigued by this one, and my hold finally came in. This is heavily inspired by Narnia. Like literally at the beginning of the synopsis it says that. So it's kind of like a contemporary homage to the Chronicles of Narnia. And I actually really preferred the first half of this book to the second half. So in the first half of this book, we are not in any kind of magical world. We are in the real world. I believe we're in like North Carolina or South Carolina, somewhere along there. There's this big national forest by where our main characters Jeremy and Rafe live, and when they were kids they actually went missing in this big forest. They were eventually found and rescued, and they're okay, and now they're adults, and Jeremy and Rafe don't really speak to each other because while Jeremy remembers everything that happened, Rafe doesn't remember, and Jeremy like refuses to tell him. Jeremy actually has a talent for finding missing people, so he actually does this for a living, where if someone's child goes missing, he will find them, and he has like an incredible success rate. And so, yeah, that's kind of the first half of the book. We also have this character, this female character who's like younger than them, whose sister went missing a long time ago. And she is approaching Jeremy to help find her sister. And so that's how she gets drawn into this friend group. This is a male-male romance as well. The romance is between Jeremy and Rafe. And I did really like that aspect of it. The problem that I had was when we actually went to the like Narnia-esque world that you obviously expect from this book, because it is a fantasy book that's marketed as a, you know, take on Narnia. The fantasy world was so silly. It just felt like it didn't match the tone of the beginning of the book. And also, not only was it silly, but then there were moments when we had these really dark scenes where one of the characters is having to deal with these like, I don't know, dream-like sequences or nightmare sequences of his abusive father. And so it was just this really weird disconnect of like, the world is too silly and unserious, but also there's this like really weird darkness with like this abusive storyline that we're getting. And so tonally, I really didn't like it. I thought the world was pretty stupid. Just the explanation of things and I don't know, it was just not what I wanted. I don't think it was well done, which is crazy because I really did enjoy the first half of the book. Like, I really enjoyed the atmosphere of like, I don't know, like this big forest, and one of the characters lives in this like cabin in the woods, and there's this kind of angsty tension between the two men. Anyway, so I gave this book 3 stars. It was definitely a big disappointment, and there were definitely moments in the second half of the book where I was like, wow, is this a 2-star book? And it's not, just because of how much I did enjoy the first half. Next up, I read my only 5-star of the month, and that was Problematic Summer Romance by Ali Hazelwood. I did read this as a physical library book. if you care to know. And I read a lot of this while I was on a little weekend trip to Charlevoix, which is a town in northern Michigan that's very cute. It's on Lake Michigan. Very like idyllic Michigan summer little town, so that was very fun. This is an age gap romance, and I've seen a lot of people talk about this online and get the ages incorrect, so let me break it down for you. Maya is 23 and Connor is 38. And when I heard that, I did think that was weird. And certainly it's not something that I would ever encourage in real life, but I think the way that the author did this was really well done. And it's very clear that there isn't actually any manipulation or power imbalance or grooming happening in this relationship. And I think that Ali Hazelwood did a really good job of making that clear without making the book too like heavy and serious. And so we do have this friendship between Maya and Connor. And the friendship really starts when Maya is in college and Connor is the friend of her brother and business partner of Maya's older brother, Eli. Most of this book does take place in Italy. Anyway, so we are getting some flashback chapters of Maya and Connor just becoming friends and talking, and they have this connection of like being really close friends that they just can't really tear themselves away from. And Connor is very, very, very insistent that like nothing can happen between them because she's way too young, and like she just, you know, has this crazy crush on him but also really wants to be his friend. And I thought that the way that the romance developed was really wonderful. I had such a fun time with this book. I just flew through it. I loved the Italy setting. I loved having this kind of isolated group of people staying in this villa in Italy, and that was just such a fun, perfect setting for this. I really liked Connor. Connor is Irish, if that helps, and I could just picture him so vividly. I really liked Maya too. It was just the perfect romance. What can I say? I don't really have any critiques. Maybe in an ideal world she would have been like 25 instead of 23, but at the end of the day, she's a grown woman, so she can do what she wants. Next up, I read another really highly rated book, and that is Greta and Balden by Rebecca K. Riley. This is a contemporary story about these two siblings who are both queer. They live in New Zealand, and they are half Maori, half Russian. And so they kind of have this really interesting and entertaining family situation. And so we get to see what they're dealing with personally and also what's going on in the family. This book is so funny. I laughed out loud while listening to this so many times. If you're interested in this book, I would highly recommend the audio. I think the narrator's Kiwi accents really helped bring the like drier humor to life. I don't know if it's dry humor, whatever. I really liked listening to this on audio and having the jokes be delivered by performers. It was just made it so funny, and obviously a lot of that is due to the writing as well. But yeah, I really loved both of these characters. I'm not sure what I was expecting, but this was just really unique. I've never read anything that feels exactly like this book. It wasn't super dark, it wasn't super emotional, it wasn't super sexual or kinky. It was just like a little bit of everything, and overall it was just hopeful and quirky, not super weird, but I loved the main characters. I would want to be friends with them 100%. I'm probably not cool enough to be friends with them. We also had a bit of an academic setting because Greta is either a master's or a PhD student in literature. I don't know, I just loved this. I gave it 4.5 stars, but sometimes I think about it and I want to go back and give it 5 stars because I just don't really have anything negative to say about it. Maybe I wasn't like in love with it at the beginning of the book, but by the end I was definitely head over heels for this one, and I highly, highly recommend it. Alright, next up we have a heavy hitter because I have been meaning to read this book for a long time. It's on my physical TBR. It's by someone who I believe is becoming a favorite author for sure. And so that is Ship of Magic by Robin Hobb. This is the first book in the Live Ship Traders trilogy, which is the second trilogy in this world called the Realm of the Elderlings. So if you've ever seen people's huge Robin Hobb collection, there is kind of like an established order that people read all these series in. This series is pretty much unrelated to the Farseer trilogy. We are not following Fitz or any of those characters in this book, but we are in the same world, of course. In this book, we are in this town called Bingtown, which is a like trader merchant hub. And this area of land was, I think it's called the Cursed Shores, actually. And the people who settled here and made it profitable and made it a home and made it economically viable are these like established trader families, and these are kind of like the elite of Bingtown today. These original trader families made a pact with the magical, mysterious people of the Rainwilds, and that's kind of what keeps this economy flowing, because they have these sentient ships called live ships, and the ships are made out of this magical wood called wizard wood. Yeah, there's a lot of family drama in this book. We have this one merchant family that we are following called the Vestrits, and the patriarch of the family has just died, and the oldest daughter, Althea, actually maybe she's not the oldest, but one of the daughters, Althea, has been prepared to inherit this ship her entire life, and because of the magic of the wood, the familial connection between a trader family and the ship is really strong, and so she expects that she is going to be the captain of this ship, but she is actually written out of the will. There's a lot going on in this book. It is very slow at first, but then a lot of things start snowballing, and by the end of it, you're just really excited to read book 2 and see all of the plot threads and how they play out. I gave this 4 stars. I think I'm really excited to learn about the Rainwilds and learn about that kind of more magical, creative, interesting stuff, but this book isn't really focused on that. And I was just thinking, like, why is this so long? That was really my biggest problem with this book, was I was reading it for about 250 pages at the beginning, and really the main thing going through my head was, why does this need to be so long? And by the end of it, I do maintain that this could have been a good 200 pages shorter and accomplished everything that it needed to accomplish. I do think the beginning is pretty slow with a lot of details that could have been given faster or wrapped up faster or something. But overall, I did give this 4 stars. I still really enjoyed it. It is Robin Hobb. After all, I'd be really shocked if she ever got anything less than a 4-star for me. Next up, I read Left of Forever by Tara DeWitt. This was a ebook from my library that I read, and this is the story of 2 people who were featured in the first book, which is called Savor It. This story follows Ren and Ellis is the brother of the main girl from book 1. And Ren and Ellis were actually married years ago, and they ended up getting divorced. They do have a teenage son who is, in the present, actually going to college. So they have this kind of road trip back from dropping their kid off at college that they're kind of using to really talk things through and, you know, hash things out and maybe see if they are interested in restarting something. Things have been very tense between them at all of the family gatherings and such over the years. It's also really hard because Ren is like best friends with Ellis's sister, who is the main girl in the first one, like I said. So there's just a lot of like really close family ties between this couple, and it's really hard to disentangle their lives. So they've been in proximity a lot, and it's just been really hard for them to be around each other and feel so tense. This kind of reminds me of Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan, because part of the reason for why they divorced was something to do with a pregnancy that was dangerous, or they lost a pregnancy, something like that. In both books is a common like trope. I found it kind of strange in this book that it was like barely touched upon. I don't know, maybe I just like missed it, but I kind of felt like confused about the super specific details as to why they got divorced in the first place. Whereas in Before I Let Go, it's very, very clear and evident what actually happened, and you do get these flashback chapters. So I don't know, maybe I missed it in Left of Forever, but yeah, I was a little bit confused, like, so wait, what actually happened? They like didn't touch on it enough, which maybe was just the author not wanting the book to be too heavy or too triggering for people who have gone through the same thing. But overall, I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 stars. I was hoping for a 5-star. It wasn't quite there. I find that second chance romances are really hard to get to that 5-star place, but I really liked these characters. I loved the Pacific Northwest setting, and I think they're also in California at points, but very good. The main character, the writing is so mature and emotionally mature, but it's also fun and sexy, and just, I really like this author's writing. She's definitely for me, and I'm excited to read more from her. The next 3 books are all 3 stars, so I'm going to kind of keep these short because I don't have a ton to say about them. I read A Terribly Nasty Business by Julia Seals as a physical library book. These covers are so freaking cute. I gave the first book in this series 3.5 stars. I had really high hopes for it, but the mystery part ended up disappointing me a little bit. This one is a sequel. We have our main character whose name is Beatrice, and Beatrice has actually gone to London in this book to find a husband. She's with her chaperone, and she is also trying to kind of covertly co-run a detective agency with Detective Vivek Drake, who is this charming Indian man who she met in the first book, and they worked together to solve a murder in the first book. And so in this one, they're trying to start this business together, and there's a little bit of romantic tension in this book, which I really, really enjoyed, and I wish that it had been played up a lot more. And the main mystery in this one has to do with this like social club called the Rose, and someone in the club is murdered, and so Beatrice becomes a debutante in this society of rich Londoners. These books also have a really silly, goofy tone to them, which is fun, but I don't think that the mysteries are well plotted enough to make me rate them super highly. So yeah, I liked this one, didn't love it, but I will probably read the third one. This next book is kind of a heartbreaking disappointment. I finally read Spear by Nicola Griffith, which is a queer King Arthur retelling in a fantasy novella. And that made me think I was going to give it 5 stars because I absolutely love reading fantasy books that have to do with King Arthur and Merlin and the Knights of the Round Table. Unfortunately, this book was too literary for my taste. I also think that I kind of struggle with a fantasy novella. You would think that, you know, because they're so short, you know, you get through them quickly, there isn't a lot of time wasted, but for me, I don't know, I've never really loved a fantasy novella, so maybe that is part of the problem. This is a really beloved book, and Nicola Griffith is a very talented writer, so it feels like I'm the problem, not the book. But yeah, I just thought this was very focused on the beautiful writing rather than the actual stories and characters, and although it was atmospheric, I definitely felt a little bit distanced from the actual story. And even though I could appreciate that the writing style was beautiful and very well done, and there were a lot of historical details about the, you know, materials and the clothes and, you know, the nature, but I don't know, I just felt at a distance from the story, and I didn't fall in love with it. I would say that I liked it, but certainly no more than 3 stars. This is really disappointing. But I am glad that I read it, and I might consider picking up Nicola Griffith's other fantasy series, which are very long fantasy books. And lastly, I read The Kamigawa Food Detectives by Hisashi Kashiwai, translated by Jessie Kirkwood. This is another one of those cozy translated works of literature that I read, and the title is a little bit misleading because I think people go into this thinking that it is a murder mystery kind of book. It is not. So the father and daughter pair in this book have a little restaurant, and they advertise very slyly that they have a food detective agency within this restaurant. So basically you can come in and say, hi, I really want to find out what this recipe is that my aunt cooked for me in 1983 in Kyoto at, in this neighborhood, and they will figure out the recipe using detective work and clues and extensive knowledge of food and Japanese culture, or in some instances the foods are from other cultures. There is a cat on the cover. I wouldn't say that the cat is super present in the story, which is a little disappointing. There is a cat named Drowsy who kind of lives outside of the restaurant, but it's definitely not like a cat heavy story. This was so fine. Like, it was just okay. I had a decent enough time reading it. I was a little bit bored the whole way through, just like I am with most cozy books, but I keep reading them. I don't know why. I think sometimes I just need something that is comforting and a little bit boring, and that's okay, and I can't really rate it too highly, but sometimes you just need that. So I liked this one. It kind of read like short stories because every section of the book was a different customer coming into the restaurant and saying, hey, I need help with such and such food mystery. So this one was cute and wholesome. 3 stars, like I said. Hopefully someday I will find more cozy translated fiction that does a lot more for me. Alright, those are all the books that I read, but I just want to show off 2 books that I added to my TBR in the past couple of days. Hopefully I will be reading these in the next few months, because when I get new books on my TBR, the goal is to not let them languish for too long. I haven't been great about that, but usually when they're new releases, I'm better at it. So, first up, I got Catabasis or Catabasis by R.F. Kuang. I actually had canceled my pre-order because it was going to be about $40 because the book itself is $35 and shipping was like $5 or $6. I don't know why I couldn't just go pick it up, but I saw this at Costco for $20, and it is the like sprayed edges version, and it does have this beautiful naked hardcover with texture that I really like. So I was thrilled to find this for $20. Obviously I want to support indie bookstores as much as I can, but I couldn't pass up a deal like this, and I do like Costco as a company. They are doing some better things than other American companies, so I don't feel too bad about giving them a little bit of extra money. And then yesterday I went book shopping at my local indie with my friend, and I picked up Lost Souls Meet Under a Full Moon by Mizuki Sugimura. This is the author of Lonely Castle in the Mirror, which I listened to a couple months ago and really enjoyed. That was kind of the first book that kicked off this like cozy translated literature thing that I've been on, and although Lonely Castle in the Mirror isn't necessarily like super cozy, I thought it was cozy. And I actually don't know a ton about what this book is about. I forgot to tell you what this is about. This is about 2 academics going into hell to rescue their academic advisor, and I believe that there is a bit of romance as well. I don't know what this one is about. I don't want to read the synopsis, but I have a feeling it's going to be magical realism and human stories. It's pretty short. This cover is absolutely stunning, and I'm really excited to read this. That is all, my friends. Thank you for watching. If you're wondering what I'm reading right now, I'm reading Her Majesty's Royal Coven by Juno Dawson, so look out for that in my September wrap-up next month. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely week, and don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more bookish content from me.